the public?
There is one.
Okay.
Mr. Abreu, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, I have a procedural question. You know, has anybody tried to log into this Zoom meeting using the password that you published on your agenda? If you type in the numbers, you know, the 7 or 8 digit code, it doesn't work. You know, I bet you that everybody here used that link, but if you actually type in the numbers, this meeting is inaccessible to the public.
I just typed in all those numbers and the word to get in. That's how I got in.
Yeah, well, I typed them in various ways.
Point of order. We're talking about the appointment of the public member.
Yeah.
Well, how long has this public member been on the commission? It seems like I wonder if there's any term limits on this commission. Can you be on here for how many years? Is there, you know, some agencies, government agencies, limit you to 8 years or 12 years or 16 years? I'd be curious to find out how long this public member has been a member. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abreu. I'll turn it back to Rachel. There are certain rules in our policies regarding the public member tenure.
So, yes, thank you. The commission adopted a policy that our public members are for 4-year terms, but with no term limits.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the accessibility of the Zoom link, I appreciate you, Commissioner Von Heater-Leopold, mentioning that she was able to get in by typing in the numbers. Perhaps, April, if you can just double check. We do want to obviously be accessible to the public, whether they're clicking on the link or if they're typing in the numbers. So if you could, and please interrupt us if you happen to find any difficulty, but maybe if you can confirm that it does work. I'm sorry that Mr. Abreu was not able to get in that way, but we should confirm that it is working properly.
I will do that. Get back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There are
Okay.
13 other attendees on the, or 12 other attendees, 12 panelists and 12 other attendees who apparently did get in.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Marchand. Okay, Commissioner Warner, I'll turn it back to you. I should, I guess, close the public hearing. I don't see or hear that there's any other public comments, so I can return it to Commissioner Warner.
Are you fishing for compliments?
No, I think the next step is a motion of some sort. That's all I'm trying to incentivize you to move ahead.
Yeah, so I move that we appoint Splend as the public member.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Hubbard? Commissioner Hernandez?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Miley?
Aye.
Commissioner Warner?
Yes.
Commissioner Wieskamp? Okay, so let the record reflect the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the confidence that you each have in me, and I do very much take this position very strong, you know, the highest regard, and truly believe that my job is to represent every single citizen of Alameda County, and I've tried to do that over the last several years, and will continue to do so. You know, with all the humility I possibly could engender at this time. So thank you very much. Next item is we have 3 items on item. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just, point of order, April, I'm voting on behalf of Ann Wieskamp and I'll vote aye.
Apologies, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Georgine. All right, so I can move ahead to the consent item. We have 3 items. approval of the March 10th meeting minutes, fourth quarter budget report for fiscal year 21-22, and approval of the resolution to continue virtual meetings due to the pandemic. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Do you
Also
have to
moved.
get the public comment on that item first?
Sure. Are there any public comments to the consent items?
I do not see a hand raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Warner, for pointing that out. So we closed the public hearing. We don't have any comments. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Also move.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hobart, Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Miley,
Aye.
Commissioner Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Von Heater Leopold,
aye.
Chair Splendorio.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Next is item number 6. This is hearing for a out of area service agreement between for the city of Pleasanton and the owners of 720 Mockingbird Lane in unincorporated Pleasanton. April, if I can ask you for a staff report.
Rachel, but I will blame that on the jet lag.
Oh, Rachel. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. That is jet lag.
That is okay.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Rachel.
Chair. So Alameda LAFCO has received a proposal through a resolution of application from the city of Pleasanton requesting an out-of-area service agreement involving one legal lot totaling 1.19 acres within the city's sphere of influence. The affected territory, as Chair Splendorio mentioned, has a situs address of 720 Mockingbird Lane, and it's located within the unincorporated community of Happy Valley. And also the affected territory is substantially surrounded by the city of Pleasanton. The primary purpose of the proposal is to facilitate the extension of public wastewater and water services as a result of an old septic system and dry on-site groundwater well. The Alameda County Department of Environmental Health does not permit new septic systems in unincorporated Happy Valley area, and also encourages landowners in the unincorporated community to connect to city water and wastewater. The Alameda County Department of Environmental Health reviewed the conditions of the existing on-site septic system and made the recommendation on May 14th of 2001, and again on January 19th of this year for the site to abandon the existing septic system and connect to the city of Pleasanton's wastewater system. An existing city-owned water main and sanitary sewer main, they're both located directly in front of the affected territory on Amber Lane. The city states it does have the capacity to serve the affected territory, but now, annexations are the preferred method under LAFCO law to use boundary changes to ensure the relationship between land and service providers. The city indicates the annexation is not feasible at this time due to the necessity for infrastructure improvements after the city presented to the commission at its March 9th, 2017 regular meeting, a comprehensive study on Happy Valley water and sewer services. The city prefers to annex the entire territory than by an individual or piecemeal basis. I just want to note and highlight to the commission that it does have the authority to also approve the out-of-area service agreement on the condition that the city of Pleasanton submits an annexation application within a specified period of time. Under Government Code Section 56375.5, the statute allows for cities to annex islands through a streamlined process that does not require protest proceedings or elections, and provided that the island meets a special criteria, which is that it's substantially surrounded and it's 150 acres or less in size. And this affected territory does qualify under that, which could make it easier for the city of Pleasanton to annex, what we call an unincorporated island. Nevertheless, staff does not recommend for the commission to condition a specified time period for the city to submit an annexation application if the proposed out of area service agreement is if the proposed out of area service agreement is approved. And the reason being is that the city of Pleasanton's hesitance of approving one-by-one annexations, it can miss the chance to fund overall infrastructure improvements in the unincorporated area of Happy Valley. Additionally, the city and county have to come to an agreement regarding the funding of the infrastructure needs set out in that 2017 Happy Valley Water and Sewer Study. Until an agreement has been reached, staff recommends the commission move forward with the out of area service agreement proposal. I'll return to the item to the chair for any questions and commission discussion. And also just to mention, this is a public hearing item, so to open the public hearing.
All right, well, thank you, Rachel. We have some questions from commissioners. I'll call on Commissioner Brown first, who has her hand up.
Thank you, Rachel, for your staff presentation. Was there a pre-annexation agreement in this program?
Yes, there is a pre-annexation agreement, and that is the standard term in the out of area service agreement proposal. So if approved, the landowners will have to sign that.
Thank you. And I guess this is more a legal question, but is it truly binding? I've heard that pre-annexation agreements are agreements. They're sort of a old-fashioned term, gentleman agreements, but it's difficult to make them binding. But nevertheless, they show intent and support for annexation should that happen in the future.
Yes, it does. I would have to refer that to legal counsel. I think it is binding because it's binding on the property itself, not just for the landowners. So it goes with the property.
Thank you. That's my questions.
In fact, Andrew, if you could clarify, does the pre-annexation agreement does run with the land?
Chair Splendor, I just want to point out, Andrew is not here, but he is out of town, but we have counsel Audrey.
Audrey's here. Okay, thank you. Audrey, do you mind weighing in on this?
Good afternoon. I am here. My camera isn't working. I apologize. I'm put on lipstick and a jacket for this and my camera won't work, but I apologize. It's been a while since I've looked at a pre-annexation agreement in terms of whether or not it runs with the land or not. I'm happy to talk with Andrew and we can report back to you on that.
Okay.
My suspicion is that it might not, but I don't want to go down too far without further research. So my apologies. Okay. I do not know offhand the answer to that question.
So just if we could finish, the chair, we have had many of these pre-annexation agreements throughout the Happy Valley as they've stepped forward. So this sounds like, unless staff wants to correct me, this is in line with the other pre-annexation agreements. This is the standard for Happy Valley, and sometime, who knows when in the future, there may be a complete annexation into the city of Pleasanton. I would certainly welcome that, but at this time, we've been just using these pre-annexation agreements successfully. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Warner.
Yeah, Rachel, you mentioned that the recommendation is not to put a time limit. What's the significance of that? Is there any downside to just leaving this open for indefinite?
I would just say if the commission were to put a time limit on when for the city to submit an annexation agreement, just given the circumstances with the infrastructure improvements, the city could do that, but given that they're very hesitant on that, and also that maybe that the landowners do not want to annex into the city as well, staff suggests to wait on that until kind of all the parties are in agreement on submitting a proposal. Leaving it open-ended, that just means that at a later date, the agreement still holds, and when a resident is ready, there's no time frame on it, and when a resident is ready to move forward with the annexation agreement, all those residents that already signed that cannot object to annexation.
So I think I understood what it meant. My question was, is there a downside to not putting a time limit on it? That's kind of, is that, in other words, you recommended not doing it. And I was just asking, is there any negative consequence of not doing it?
From the practice, no, I do not believe there are any, negative consequences that could come out of it right now. No.
Okay. I mean, again, you just qualified it with the right now. I don't see any myself, but I was just wondering why one would ordinarily put a time limit on if there's no consequence to not. That's all. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? None?
Chair Splendorio, this is Audrey Beeman again. I just checked the annexation agreement and it does indeed run with the land and is recorded on this property.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Appreciate that quick feedback, quick research. Any comments before I open the public hearing? Scanning here, let me make sure. I don't see a hand up or somebody waving. Okay, let's open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments, either Rachel or April?
There are no public comments.
Okay, so let's close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. The recommendation is to approve this out of area service agreement. Is there anyone interested in making a motion to that effect?
Also moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Hernandez will second.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
April, can you hear us? Can you please do a roll call?
Sorry,
vote?
I'm not muted. Commissioner Hobart. Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Miley.
Aye.
Commissioner Warner.
Yes.
Alternate Commissioner Von Heater Leopold.
Aye.
Chair Splendorio.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passes.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate, during my tenure on LAFCO, I've seen innumerable out of area service agreements and many in Happy Valley. And I think if I'm saying this conservatively, we've been playing the long game when it comes to a couple of areas. One is Happy Valley. Also, the other one is the Hayward Hills, which we've approved many out of area service agreements, mostly because, as in this case, for failing septic systems. And we hope at some point that they are, both those areas are eventually annexed into the city of Pleasanton or the city of Hayward in the case of the Hayward Hills. And there has been examples. I know there are severe infrastructure needs, when a city annexes, but they can be overcome. I know that Livermore did one successfully for the Pleasant View Lane. I know Commissioner Marchand and Commissioner Warner will, I'm sure, recall that it was only maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that, and took a bit of an effort and negotiating and some arm twisting, but it happened, and I suspect we may see this again in a few years when it comes to the Buena Vista area of Livermore. We may see the same thing. So, but like I said, we play the long game because we know it's the right thing to do to get these properties without sending more nitrates into our groundwater, and we know it's the right answer eventually. Okay, enough for my comments. Item number 7, draft report on Alameda LAFCO's 20-year review of Measure D. And I think the place to start must be Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to apologize. There's a typo on the agenda that says draft report. This is the final report. And it has been prepared by consultant Scott Gregory of Lanphier Gregory as part of the commission's adopted 2021-2022 work plan. A draft report was presented at Alameda LAFCO's March 10th regular meeting and immediately preceded the initiation of a 30-day formal public review and comment period that ended on April 15th. LAFCO received comment letters from the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association, Tri-Valley Conservancy, and one comment from the public, from Dick Schneider. Additional information was incorporated in the final report to reflect feedback received from also LAFCO's meeting from the commission and during the comment period. The commission also established an ad hoc subcommittee to develop recommendations based on the report's findings and conclusions. Staff does aim to work with the subcommittee to finalize these recommendations for adoption at the commission's next regular meeting. Overall, the report found that Measure D has been effective in preservation. Since 2000, no changes to the urban growth boundary have occurred, and no urban development has displaced agricultural open space lands on the outside of the urban growth boundary. It has been restrictive in maximum building intensity. We found that Alameda County's 1% Florida area ratio regulations are substantially more restrictive on the size of non-residential buildings compared to some of the other counties. The county is currently working on a proposed ballot measure to allow for the potential maximum of a 2.5% floor area ratio requirement. The Measure D may have contributed to somewhat of a stagnant agricultural economy. Despite significant losses in farm-based employment, the revenue from the East County agriculture operation appears to remain stable, but they're not growing. We find that the stability of overall agricultural business revenue is driven by continued strong growth sales in wine grapes, but the wine industry's revenue growth eclipses the relatively sizable decline in sales revenue in productive agricultural use of other agricultural activities. And this is like crop harvesting and horse boarding within East County. But again, while revenue may be sufficient to cover annual operating expenses, in many cases, the report notes that the amount of annual revenue above annual operating expenses is not sufficient to cover the amortized expenses of establishing a vineyard or to generate a return on the investment in the vineyard. Overall, right now, staff requests the commission to accept a final report prepared by Lanfair Gregory and approve its findings and conclusions. So in turn, that right now, staff is working to present the final report to key stakeholders and agencies in the region. And this will help facilitate policy decisions surrounding the proposed amendment to ballot measure D, and also help in aiding developing recommendations with the commission's ad hoc subcommittee for adoption at the commission's July 14th regular meeting. I will return the item to the chair for any commission discussion and feedback or comments, and to open the public hearing. Also, I just want to please, I want to note that consultant Scott Gregory is here too in attendance to answer any questions from the commission.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Rachel. Let's first ask the commission if there are any questions that they'd like to ask at this time of either, I see Commissioner Miley, we could call on you first, but if there's any, it's open to our staff, to our consultant, our planning consultant. So Nate, start with you.
Thank you. Thank Rachel for the excellent review of the report. I believe my only question, and Rachel can answer this, or it's going to have to bounce over to Audrey, especially Andrew's not here. I asked at the last meeting if LAFCO can endorse ballot measure, and I don't think I've gotten a response on that yet.
I think Andrew sent out an email last night to all the commissioners in regards to that question. Overall, the answer is yes, LAFCO can endorse a ballot measure, just can't campaign on it for the most part.
So will this be coming back to us, you said in July?
Yes, so in July, if hopefully the commission will approve a staff's recommendation and accept the report, but staff will come back to the commission at the July meeting for approval or adoption, excuse me, of certain recommendations that we deem worthy that came out of this report.
I'm hoping maybe by that board would have taken action on placing this amendment on the ballot. But if we haven't, next LAFCO meeting would be in September.
So then I don't know if I heard everything, Commissioner Miley, but our next LAFCO meeting is in July, and then following that would be September.
Okay, because I definitely want to try to get LAFCO to support the Measure D amendment on the Board of Supervisors on the ballot. Okay, so that answers my question, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mile. Next up is Commissioner Marchand.
Thank you, Chair. In the staff report, it said that staff was going to reach out to a number of stakeholders, but was unable to get on the agenda in time for this meeting. So, for example, the councils of Livermore, Pleasanton, Dublin, the Alameda County Transportation Commission, and the Planning Commission for Alameda County. Will their comments still be able to be incorporated in the final report? Also, the subcommittee as well wanted to be able to provide input.
So thank you, Commissioner Marchand. So staff, the report was sent out to all those agencies on that list. Staff just wanted to personally go out to highlight, what we're working on. Right now, if approved, staff will go around again to those committees to receive feedback, maybe on certain recommendations for staff to develop these recommendations for adoption at the July meeting. The report itself won't be altered after, but it will at least help develop recommendations that will go forth to the commission.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, Commissioner Warner.
I just want to make sure I understood that. So this final report is subject to revision. Is that what I just heard?
No. So at this current meeting, the commission, staff's recommendation is for the commission to approve the final report and also the final conclusions. And then now after that has been accepted, staff will work with the ad hoc subcommittee to kind of pick out from those findings and conclusions and develop recommendations that we can use, such as for LAFCO to support the county's ballot measure.
Okay, I just
one recommendation.
Okay, and then that was the follow-on next question I have. So first of all, this is the final report, so there are no revisions. That's it.
Correct.
Okay, then second of all, we are going to, the reason we put together that ad hoc subcommittee was to be responsive to Commissioner Miley's request that we get this in front of the Board of Supervisors, et cetera, right? So I just want to make sure that I understand we're on track to get that done. So your answer is to Commissioner Miley is we're good with respect to that?
Yes, we're still on track to get that done.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out with respect to the legal opinion with respect to what we can do, already this thing, just more specifically what I got out of that is we can say we're in favor of it, but we can't exhort any member of the public to vote for it. So that's a key distinction.
Correct.
We can say it's good, but we can't say go vote for it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Warner. Does any other commissioner have any questions at this time? I'm not seeing any hands up. All right, let me open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments. Oh, excuse me. There are 2 public comments.
Okay, proceed.
Mr. Abreu, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Excuse me, LG, you're permitted to talk. Can you unmute your mic?
Yes, this is Larry Goslin. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to let you know that I did work with Mr. Gregory on providing advice regarding or providing information regarding the status of the equine industry in Alameda County, and appreciate the fact that that outreach was included in this report. Unfortunately, while doing my final review of the report, I've discovered that there's an inconsistency that's fairly significant, considering that the report can't be revised. And so I'll get to that specificity with Mr. Gregory being here. On page 82, it's correctly noted under the heading of horses, boarding stables, and riding academies that grazing, breeding, or training of horses are permitted uses in the agricultural zoning district. However, boarding stables and riding academies are permitted uses in the agricultural zoning district with site development review. Now, on page 84, table 4.5 or 4-5, those terms are not used correspondingly in the table. So there's an inconsistency of the use of the terms. To make the table consistent with the zoning ordinance, it was correctly cited on page 82. Grazing and breeding of horses should have training added to it. And on table 4-5, the second line, the line commercial stables, horse training, and riding academies should have horse training and commercial stables removed, or as an alternative, the graph can be footnoted with an explanation as to why there's an inconsistency between the table and the zoning ordinance of Alameda County. So those are my primary concerns at this time, and I'm hopeful they can be corrected. And then something I'd like to comment on is the fact that agriculture has been kind of yanked away from being a competitive fair market industry by Measure D, and it now has a non-traditional role as a municipal service. Agriculture is responsible for defending the urban limit line and providing extensive agro-ecosystem services for free. So even though it is somewhat non-traditional to think of agriculture in this way, I would like the commission to recognize that at this time, agriculture is a municipal service and should be extensively studied in terms of its existing infrastructure and needed infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. On Larry's comment, if you could ask Mr. Gregory if he's following Larry's comments, and if he agrees with them, can the perceived inconsistency be resolved in case the commission would like to approve this as a final report? Scott?
All right, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did follow the conversation. I understood Mr. Goslin's comment. Depending on the board's preference, we could accept that as a comment, and we could fix this after. Does that work for the board, Rachel?
We can definitely make some technical edits to that after.
I think the idea of a footnote that explains kind of the semantics and the complexities of the differences between the regulatory provisions would be a good suggestion.
And we can include that request in the staff recommendation for approval.
And also included in the motion if that's what the commission desires.
And I see a hand raised from Commissioner Warner too.
Yes, I'm getting back to them. Thank you very much. All right, Commissioner Warner.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the simplest thing is just make the motion to modify the report. And if we have any other comments that we need to do, we can do that now. The other thing I wanted to make sure I understood the terminology of saying that agriculture is a municipal service. I didn't understand what that meant. What are the implications of claiming it's a service?
You want to bring it back to open the public hearing? Well, the public hearing is still open, but Larry, would you like to address Commissioner Warner's
No,
question?
I was thinking I'd rather have the legal counsel opine on that.
So to
Audrey?
be clear, before you ask for
Okay.
legal counsel, our report does not say that.
Yeah, that's not a term I found in the report either, Bob.
Yeah, and I don't want that comment to go as part of the official record, as somehow we're acknowledging that.
Okay, understood. You still want me to ask Audrey to, because it's not in the report.
No, I'm
it's
just,
that's Larry's
that's good
comment.
enough. I just wanted to say, I don't know what that meant or the implications, and it was just a little odd to me, that's all.
All right. I want to, if you don't mind, Commissioner Von Heater Leopold, can we take any other further public comments? And then I'll get back to you, unless it's on this subject specifically. Yes, no, okay. So any other public comments at this point?
One more public comment. Mr. Brio, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please unmute your mic.
Yeah, when we ask about what does it mean for agricultural as a municipal service, well, the implication is kind of obvious. It means if you're providing a service, then you expect to get paid. You expect some kind of a return. So that would be the next step. The service provider would look to get reimbursed for the wonderful services that they're providing. This overview report, it talks about weak growth in the agricultural sector of the unincorporated county. But in fact, the report greatly undersells the expansion of irrigated agriculture under Measure D. It relies solely on the Department of Conservation GIS database, which perhaps is isn't really line up with the facts on the ground. Now, what are the facts on the ground? Well, let's talk about Landsat. Landsat is the longest running database for satellite imagery of the entire planet. It combines NASA and USGS, and it was launched in 1972. Now, that's before Measure D. Now, it offers time-lapse images of human development. It measures precisely how the size of a city grows over time. It can tell you if your urban growth boundary is working. It gives you insight on the types of urban development, the specific aspects of social and political change that are visible through the multispectral images in 8 different wavelengths. You know, all this stuff is obvious to the people who work over there in Lawrence Livermore Labs, by the way. And it actually has a time-lapse comparison chart compares 2001 to 2019. So that matches up well with the need to see how is Measure D doing. And what you see when you look at Landsat is that Measure D is nothing short of an unqualified success. You see a significant, sizable expansion of irrigated agriculture in the South Livermore Valley. Now, the key that's corroborated by the untreated water use reported by the Zone 7 Water Agency, which has now reached 6,000 acre-feet per year. That has also grown significantly since Measure D was passed in 2000. So the key takeaways, what are the key takeaways? We need to further enhance and grow the economic vitality of agriculture and improve the industry. You can't go out and plow more ground because the water is a limiting factor, and land, but mainly water. So we need to figure out how to improve the tourism, agritourism, and related activities, and really intensify that. And that, the sewer line, whatever it takes to make agriculture better and stronger, that's going to make you more profitable, stronger, and better, and not use more water, and not necessarily use more land. But Measure D is an unqualified success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comments?
No more public comments.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing and return it to the commission. And we have a hand up from Commissioner Von Heater Leopold. Georgine?
Yeah, thank you, Splend. I have to say that I'm a little concerned that we're looking to approve this without having presented it to so many agencies that are affected. And I would prefer putting this off to the next meeting and allowing the 3 cities and Alameda County to respond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I actually will echo that sentiment. But I'd like to hear from other commissioners on where the direction they'd like to go. But I do have some comments, but I do want to hear from other commissioners. Anyone have any comments? All right, well, let me go then. My initial thought was I did want to, and I know there's been outreach. I know Mr. Gregory and I know Rachel have tried. I know that. So you can take a look at that way. Either, some of these jurisdictions or some of these stakeholders, could reply and could, I've tried myself. I've tried to get others to weigh in. So, we have to have a deadline to that. We can't wait forever for them. If they don't choose not to, they choose not to. But, is it worth it to spend another couple of months to try to get them to give us their comments? Perhaps. That's how I felt at the beginning. Now, but let me also tell you, the more I thought about this report, I thought it was incomplete. But in some sense, I could see it's complete as a beginning, but not as an end. And I'll give you some of my thoughts on, has Measure D been a success? It kind of, you've heard, I'm sure if Mr. Snyder is on the line, he was the one who helped write it and he will defend it. He should. But I don't know if you define success as being a limiting on the growth of cities or incentive for cities to grow internally. I don't agree necessarily. It could be a reason, but it may not be the reason. But that just begs the question, should we have studied that or not? Maybe not. But another piece of it, of Measure D, was supposed to hopefully enhance agriculture, just like that's part of our mission as LAFCO, is to preserve agriculture, and presume what that means, try to promote it, enhance it somehow. Has Measure D done that? I don't know. I've seen a lot of stats that, that I think wrongly emphasize revenue versus profits. But we can't ask Mr. Gregory to have analyzed the profits, because he probably doesn't have the tools to analyze it. But again, like I said, it's a start, but isn't necessarily the end of this analysis. Ultimately, I feel that if there's a problem with Measure D, it's its lack of adaptability. Because times have changed with agriculture, just as with any business. It's been slow to move. Now, I know that Mr. Schneider has been wonderful in working with the Tri-Valley Conservancy to make some changes to allow agriculture to adapt. But I would just, and I applaud him for that. But I do think it's been slow. The agriculture committee, just like with any business committee, moves quicker than that. And that's been more of a concern, and which again, may come back to my theme here. Perhaps this is a really great start, but it may not be the end. And whether LAFCO pushes ahead and with this as a beginning point, I don't know. So I've said a lot there. Maybe that was too much, but I'll invite comment, and maybe Commissioner Warner, if you can help me out here or shoot me down.
Well, I don't know if either one of those might happen, but it wasn't entirely following where you were going. I do think that in principle, nothing is ever perfect, and we just have to understand that. And that as long as, as time goes on, you're allowed to have further comments. My own inclination is, we've been working on this for a while. The agencies many have been reached out to, and if they were interested, they would respond. So I would ask, and similar to my other question, is there any negative consequence to kicking this further down the road? And what's the criteria for being done? But I do believe, it's my understanding, you can correct me on this, that the agencies that, or the entities stakeholders that have an interest in this have weighed in, and that this report does reflect their comments. That's my understanding. Is or I'll just ask Rachel at this point, is that correct?
Just based on the outreach that we've done, I believe that would be correct.
Right. Okay. So I'm just wondering, is there any agency out there that has some interest in this that has so far failed to respond? I mean, you can theoretically say everybody's got some interest in here, but I mean, frankly, they have been contacted and they've had, my also understanding, is plenty of time to respond. And so I don't know that completeness on that is essential, unless somebody could make an argument that some agency is critical here and we haven't heard from them. So my own point is, let's get this done and move on. I am concerned that we get the right place with the Board of Supervisors and the support we need. And I don't want to see something, frankly, if we kick it down the road again, that's just not my own nature to do that. So unless there's something really critical missing.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Commissioner Marchand. You're muted, John.
I know, thank you. So I agree with the chair. Hang on just a sec. Let me take care of that. Gotta love the timing, right? Twice in a row. So I agree with the chair. If you look on page 93 of the report, it says that the LAFCO policies are establishing incentives to support agriculture viability. And what we've seen in the report is that what's being done right now, agriculture is not viable because it is not turning a profit. And certainly that's something that would be required to remain viable. So I think one of the things that, I'm part of the subcommittee, and unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, the subcommittee who is going to be making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding Measure D, we have not been able to meet. So I would like to have the subcommittee redouble their efforts and have the opportunity to discuss this to make those recommendations. But I think that my preference would be to not finalize the report just yet until we get those recommendations back, but I'll leave that to the rest of the commission.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Miley.
Yes, thank you. Camera on here. There we go. Yes. Well, I think Measure D has, the report pointed out, has been successful in restricting urban growth. I think that's definite. I do want the report indicates that Measure D has not been supportive of enhancing and preserving agriculture. I think there are some deficiencies has caused, particularly when you compare Alameda County with other counties that have ag. And so I don't think if the report is held up for other entities to review, that's have an impact on the Board of Supervisors. I hope not, because, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself at the moment, it just seems like I've been working on trying to get Measure D amended for more than a decade. I'm hoping that, I know our staff, the county staff's moving ahead with the environmental CEQA work on the Measure D ballot measure. And then hopefully in July at the latest will be to the board for us to approve this and move ahead with a very limited and targeted amendment of Measure D to support agriculture. And maybe by that time, these other entities would have weighed in as well. So in a perfect world, it'd be good to have the report completed and approved. But if it isn't, I'm just hoping that it doesn't persuade the Board of Supervisors not to move ahead with the work we need to do to get Measure D on the ballot and get it before the voters. You know, historically, we've debated over the years whether or not the board would just do a amendment to Measure D itself without putting it on the ballot. And the majority of the Board of Supervisors decided not to do that. And then there were countless civic engagement and community meetings around Measure D over the years, where we've come to this point in time that we're going to put it on the ballot, and we've got the necessary language configured for this limited ballot amendment to Measure D. So I would also want to just add my own perspective, and this is 2020 hindsight. The authors of Measure D did a good job with what they did, but I think had some of us recognized the impediment on ag, or the inability to support ag, as was contemplated in Measure D, we probably would push for more in Measure D to support ag. I know at the time when Measure D was on the ballot, I was on the Oakland City Council. My big concern, and I supported Measure D, was just to restrict development, to restrict growth. And Measure D did do that. I was not even contemplating ag. I mean, I was not even contemplating that. And I think had more of us, and I put myself in that situation, been contemplating that, ag, we probably would have pushed harder for more to be done to support ag through Measure D. So those are my comments. If we delay the report today, I'm just hoping it doesn't have an impediment on the Board of Supervisors moving ahead with its decision. And hopefully these other jurisdictions, if they want to, the Planning Commission, the city councils, et cetera, if they want to hear this, hopefully they'll hear it by July, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Von Heater-Leopold.
Yes, I would like to say I sort of disagree with the comment that everybody who would want to comment has commented, because I believe the Alameda County Planning Commission, the Tri-Valley Conservancy, and the Agricultural Advisory Committee would have some comment. The fact that they don't seems very odd to me. I would be happy to go to their meetings under public comment and encourage their respective councils or bodies to please ask staff to respond. If it's, we're pleased with what it was or what it says and that's it, then respond. No response isn't telling us for sure what happened. Additionally, this was supposed to support ag, and in the course of events, we've discovered that some of the things that people believe will support ag, such as B&Bs and whatnot, can't be built, and it's stopping many of those places. I mean, I have a friend that has a horse out there somewhere. I don't know the name of the ranch, but they can't build a bigger stable. They can't build a bigger workout area. So something is wrong with Measure D. What it is, I'm not sure, but I'm really not comfortable with nobody responding.
Chair, can I just make a
Yes,
note?
please.
So the Tri-Valley Conservancy did provide and respond with a comment letter, and that's included in this agenda packet in the staff report. And also staff was able to meet with the Agriculture Advisory Committee before the draft report was issued to the commission at its March meeting. And staff received several comments from attendees at that committee, which was incorporated in this report. We weren't able to meet with the Transportation and Planning Committee, but we are scheduled to meet with them on, I believe, in June. And hopefully we'll receive input from them in developing recommendations.
Thank you, Rachel. Let me hand up from Commissioner Warner.
Yeah, one thing that occurs to me here is we have the report and we separately have additional recommendations, I believe. And I do not believe that what we're talking about being incomplete here is necessarily factual information. That I mean, we're not going to have the consultant go back and develop more facts, right, with respect to this report. So I would separate conceptually this report of basically facts with the separate recommendations that are going to be developed. So again, and because I like to see things get done on a timely basis, I would recommend that we seriously consider accepting the report with the clear understanding that there will be recommendations to follow. But I'm worried that I've seen many times agencies have a predilection to delay doing stuff. And I'm worried what would happen at the Board of Supervisors. It's just one more thing. Oh, well, it's not final. Why don't we wait for that yet, et cetera. So, but if we don't approve the report and move on, I suggest we have a very clear deadline for when it will get done, a very clear deadline for when we will have the recommendations, and make it the schedule clear that we're going to get done what we need to get done in time to get the proper support for what the modifications we need. But I get very nervous when people step up to the brink and say, oh, whoa, you know, because I think it's sufficient and that we can get moving. We have it, it's there, facts, and then we move on to the recommendations, which are a separate thing. And frankly, recommendations are interpretations of the facts, and it's political in nature, et cetera. So that's my own thought is if we're gonna kick the can down the road, I want a deadline for when we're done.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Warner. Commissioner Hernandez.
Yes, I just wanted to agree with Mayor Warner because, you know, us sitting on city council, these are things that we face, right, all the time with regards to deadlines and so on. And, you know, kicking the can down the road is, you do have to put an end to it. So I would want to make sure that we have a clear date. I would like for the ad hoc meeting to really make a point to meet, whether that's via Zoom, doesn't mean to have to meet in person, and get that going and try a little harder.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners? All right, this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing two different things, or maybe not two different things, but two. I'm hearing give it a little bit more time, and I would say no further than our July meeting to solicit additional comments that can be incorporated into the report, and then it would become fine, hopefully be voted upon as final at our July meeting. Or I'm hearing that we finalize it today with the understanding that there could be recommendations made by our subcommittee for further, whether it's suggestions that something LAFCo does or that the county does, or things it's within the purview of the subcommittee, make those recommendations. Are those the two different points of view that I'm hearing here? I'm seeing nods of heads. Okay. Commissioner Warner, you have a comment?
I was going to say, I think that's stated. I think just the refinement is that, you know, we can bifurcate the finalization of the report and the recommendations. That's all. And that, you know, it's the recommendations are coming out of LAFCo. The report's coming out of the consultant. I mean, that's kind of the way I think about it.
Okay. All right. So let me with either one of those two, let me tell you how because I maybe it wasn't clear when I said I think this is a report, is a start. It may not be the end. I do want it to make it, from my mind, to support either one of those, is that LAFCo would be free to further study Measure D, regardless of the finality based upon anything the county may, if it makes it approves an amendment or a ballot initiative, or if our subcommittee makes some recommendations. Like I said, to me, it is incomplete in the sense it doesn't address the economics, and not that that was within the purview of what we asked Mr. Gregory to study, but it might be something we may want to study. And I'd like to leave that open for us to take those on if we are so inclined. Rachel, do you have any comment to that? Is that something we could take on?
I definitely believe so, that this report leaves it open to the commission on whether they want to study it additionally or do another, another side study.
Okay. All right, so we're at a crossroads here. I'm going to be, I hate to do this to you guys, but I'm going to be supportive of either one of those two motions. Because what I felt was most important was the ability for us to study, make additional studies. So whether it's final today or final in July, I'm more interested in the ability for us to further study. All right, Commissioner Warner.
Oh, since you're indifferent, I'll just put it out there, and then we can get this done. So I recommend we accept the report with the understanding that there will be two follow-on actions. One is definite, that we will have the set of recommendations coming out of LAFCO, and two, with the understanding that the report doesn't mean, means that it's itself final, but that doesn't mean it's the end all and be all, and that we're acknowledging that at any time we so desire, we can initiate another report on an expanded scope. Because I think what you just said, Splin, is very important. You felt it incomplete, but it wasn't something that was in scope in the first place. So the thing that nails projects all the time is scope creep, right? So what you were proposing is scope creep. So I'm saying, let's keep the scope where it is, acknowledge that if we want to expand the scope at a later date, we can. So my recommendation is we accept the report with the edits to the table on the clarity that was for term usage that was mentioned earlier, and that we pick a date for the recommendations to come out, and we leave it open for further matters initiated for additional study should there the need arise. So that's my motion.
Okay. Is there anyone willing to second that?
So this is Commissioner Johnson. I would second that motion.
Okay. Can I add a friendly amendment? And that is that our subcommittee try to make those recommendations by our July meeting, because we'd like to get them to the Board of Supervisors in time for Supervisor Miley to use them going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So John, it's on you to make it happen on the subcommittee. Okay, so do we have any further comment to the motion? And Commissioner Johnson, you second my friendly amendment?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
To be honest, the meeting has not been scheduled. It's not because of lack of effort.
Okay, well, by chair edict, nobody can take a vacation between now and, no, I'm just kidding. You have to meet.
Now that you've had yours.
Yeah, now that I've had mine. Okay, should we have a roll call vote?
I just want a clarification real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Was made by Warner, and you were going to do into the second, I guess the Splend you were going to do, and Commissioner Johnson.
It was a motion by Commissioner Warner and a second by Commissioner Johnson.
Very good. Thank you.
And I had a friendly amendment that the subcommittee meet by our, and give a report by our recommendations by our July meeting.
Very good. Thank you so much. Commissioner Hobart. Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Miley.
Aye.
Commissioner Warner.
Aye.
Commissioner Alternate Commissioner Von Heater Leopold,
Aye.
Chair Splendorio.
Aye.
Let the record reflect he passes.
All right, thank you very much. That was a great dialogue. Thank you very much. Great debate. Okay, next item is number 8, final budget and work plan for fiscal year 22-23. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So the item returns to the commission after a formal public review and comment period. The final budget and work plan remains intact from its initial draft, and the commission will consider adopting a final budget and work plan for the upcoming fiscal year. The final operating budget shows expenses total of $746,428, and this is a net increase of $91,000.93, or about 14% from this current fiscal year. The increase is marked by additional expenses in the services and supplies unit for LAFCO special studies and municipal service reviews, and the internal service charge unit for a LAFCO permanent office space in order to increase workspace for additional staff. Final budget revenues are matched to expenses with an increase in agency contributions by around $26,000 or 6% over the next fiscal year. The final work plan also remains intact and outlines 20 specific projects that includes creating a regional water and wastewater committee, 2 municipal service reviews, and a proposed preliminary comprehensive fiscal analysis on Castro Valley and its surrounding community. Staff recommends the commission adopt the draft resolution approving the final budget and work plan for fiscal year 2022 to 2023 and direct the executive officer to circulate the final budget and work plan to LAFCO's funding agencies. Staff would like to return the item to the chair for commission discussion and then to open the public hearing.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the staff at this point by the commissioners? Okay, let's open the public hearing. Are there any public comments
There
to
are,
this agenda item?
there are none.
All right, thank you very much. Close the public hearing, return it back to the commission, entertain a motion the staff recommends adopting the draft resolution and sending the final budget and work plan for fiscal year for funding for 22-23 to the funding agencies, which of course are all the jurisdictions within Alameda County.
And also move and thank Rachel for putting this together.
Thank you.
Hernandez will second.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hopper, Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Miley,
Aye.
Commissioner Warner,
Aye.
alternate Commissioner Von Heater Leopold,
Aye.
Chair Splendorio.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Move to agenda item number 9. This is implementation of municipal service review for the Alameda County RCD. And I know we have a PowerPoint. I believe we do. Or Rachel, you want to start off?
Thank you, Chair. So Alameda LAFCO, in partnership with the Alameda County Resource Conservation District, has received a Sustainable Lands Conservation Planning Grant from the Department of Conservation in the amount of around $250,000 to create a repository of agricultural and open space use policies from stakeholders throughout the county and to identify, map, and monitor high priority parcels of agricultural lands within the region. We have Catherine Boxer, the Executive Director from the Alameda County Resource Conservation District, to provide work to date on the project to the commission and then outline the project's futures, objectives, and goals. And so right now I will allow Ms. Boxer to share her screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Very kindly appreciate the opportunity to provide the LAFCO board a status of our collaborative project with LAFCO that we started in early 21. We were pleased to have been contacted by Rachel to be supporting the development of the SALT grant proposal, and the proposal was awarded. So we developed a planning team, and you are looking at those team members now. Rachel, myself, Courtney Kuhn, who is with me today and will also be speaking, Jennifer Trevis, and Jessica Little, who is a consultant that we've brought on to help support in some of the planning analysis. So you're going, for those of you who did not hear the SALC report last year, I'll be talking about what is SALC, its purpose, timeline, and progress today. The program of the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation was developed by the Strategic Growth Council, funded by California Climate Investments, and then implementation has been conducted by the Department of Conservation and the California Natural Resources Agency. We have created our project strategies around the development, the review and development of local and regional land use policies and potential economic development strategies that will protect critical agricultural land. Our SALC priorities: conserve ag lands at risk of development, particularly at the urban growth boundaries. We want policies ultimately that we hope to be developed and implemented by the county jurisdictions and unincorporated areas to promote infill development and reduce urban sprawl. We'll also be working on efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a reduction in vehicle miles traveled. We want Alameda County to be developing further into a healthy, resilient agricultural economy, and we want to maximize all potential co-benefits like public health. One of the many challenges that we have, not only in Alameda County, but really the entire Bay Area, is that we have very high land prices, pretty extensive development pressures. We are all facing not the threat, but the actuality of the effects of climate change. The state USDA has declared all counties official disaster drought areas just last week. There is a disconnection between local ag and other markets and local infrastructure, and there is a very keen interest by the state in addressing how we can help support disadvantaged areas of the county. So we would like to achieve this in a unified manner within the county jurisdictions and unincorporated areas. So our objectives are to facilitate discussions around ag preservation, policies and plans. We've already had significant discussions with Liz McEllicott and her team from Alameda County, and she's been very helpful. We also want to identify what locations are priorities for preservation at urban growth boundaries so that they are not developed and that annexation boundaries aren't spread out further. We'll be mapping these critical ag lands at the urban growth boundaries with the support of UC Berkeley GIS laboratory. We further wish to identify priority conservation characteristics for agricultural lands within historically disadvantaged communities that haven't had the attention and funding available. And these areas also will be mapped. The elements that we've concluded are critical to a successful, sustainable ag land conservation program is that we will be establishing a stakeholder group. We already intend to meet with all the planning agencies, but I'll be getting into a bit later some details on a larger stakeholder meeting. We are looking at policies that each jurisdiction has in its general plan and other ordinances, and we will be meeting one-on-one with each of the jurisdictions. The stakeholder meetings, both the large one we're concluding our work with, as well as the one-on-one meetings, is to discuss what is the regional vision for agriculture and what may be the needs for possible policy changes to ensure preservation of ag as well as consistency in policies throughout the jurisdictions. We'll be ranking parcels for recommendation for ag purchase or conservation easements. We'll be creating the map, GIS map, that will reflect priority conservation areas as currently being developed by ABAG. And towards the latter part of our process, we'll also be outreaching to the general community. Our intent pursuant to our grant from the DOC is to finalize the plan in the summer of 23. I would like now to take this opportunity to introduce Courtney Kuhn, who is a lead member of the RCD staff, and she is going to continue the presentation for the next 4 or 5 slides. So Courtney?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here today. I'm just gonna, since I'm kind of doing some of the day-to-day work, talk a little bit about the progress that we've made so far based on the timeline that Catherine just presented. So initially we were coming up with a plan for how to develop this plan. And we decided we needed some additional help, and we ended up hiring Jessica Little, who works for Conservation Collaborators and Together Bay Area, because she has an expertise in planning and policy analysis, both analyzing current policies and developing new policies. So she's been a great asset to the team. We've also completed policy reviews for about half of the jurisdictions in Alameda County. That includes unincorporated Alameda County, including like Castro Valley and Sunol and those areas as well. Livermore, City of Alameda, Albany, Newark, Piedmont, San Leandro, Union City, Oakland, and Fremont. We are working to have one-on-one meetings with each of those jurisdictions to go over those policy review documents. So far, we have talked with Alameda County, as Catherine mentioned earlier, with Liz McGilligot. We're meeting with San Leandro on Monday and starting to make a plan to meet with Livermore in the near future. To give you a little bit of an idea of what these policy analysis documents look like, I have 2 slides just to kind of summarize them. So the way that they start is with some really basic summary statistics, population demographics, how much ag is there, how much ag could be there based on soil type, some statistics about breeding needs, park needs, urban heat island effects, things like that. And a little bit about background of the government type. The next section is the documents that we've reviewed. We've tried to keep it really high level by focusing mostly on the general plan and those types of documents, as opposed to going really deep into the codes and ordinances, since those are usually dependent on the policies in general plans and other planning documents. So the most important elements of the general plan tend to be the land use element and the conservation elements. So it's where we really kind of dig in deep. Climate action plans, and then any other highly relevant planning documents. So for Alameda County, obviously that would be Measure D, which you all have been talking about today. South Livermore Valley has a specific plan that's very focused on agriculture, so that would also fit the bill. Otherwise, we tended to not review specific plans because generally they didn't have any agricultural policies related to them. After that list, we dig in deep about what each of the relevant policies and actions are that are listed in those documents. So the specific types of policies we were looking for had to do specifically with agriculture, agriculture zoning, community gardens, parks, farmers markets, anything that had to do with local agriculture at very small to large scales, and any possible development that might affect agriculture. Following that, we would have some questions about each of those documents. So for example, has this action actually been implemented? How did you find funding for this action? How is this policy being enforced? Things like that. And then the end of the document is some general questions that we are asking all of the jurisdictions that whose policies we're reviewing. Did we review the correct documents? Did we review them accurately? Do you expect any changes in policies? For example, some of the general plans are quite old. Oakland's general plan is from 1998, but they are in the process of developing a new one, their Oakland 2045 general plan. So we expect there to be large changes in the near future. So getting ahead of what those changes might be at these meetings. asking about challenges that they face in implementing the policies that are listed in their planning documents, and then any other stakeholders that they think should be involved in this process that we would consider involving in future meetings, either one-on-one or large stakeholder groups. Thank you.
Hi there, it's Catherine again. I'd like to discuss now some of the outcomes we are hoping to achieve in our SALT planning. As Courtney just comprehensively discussed, is that we're looking at all the current policies that affect ag in Alameda County and the unincorporated areas. We'll be mapping high priority ag areas and looking at a regional plan for how to conserve those areas, which will include policy recommendation. We want to ensure that farmers, ranchers, etc., have an opportunity to be heard and participate in this plan for long-term conservation and economic stabilization of ag for a more sustainable agriculture in the long run in Alameda County. And relative to community input, we hope that will help in providing ideas so we can conserve open space, facilitate markets locally that offer fresh, locally grown produce, make them available throughout the greater Alameda County area, and which having these produce stands available will, it's our hope, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by reducing vehicle miles traveled pursuant to the SALT guidelines. So our next steps is really looking at the next phase. Upon completion of the SALT grant that we are developing currently, we, without actually writing a new grant, will have access to funding to permanently protect croplands, rangelands, and other ag uses. We will very much encourage ag conservation easements, and that could be for open space, ranches, etc. And then, of course, there's fee title purchase, but never, ever any consideration of condemnation. The funding, we anticipate expanding our organizational capacity to develop additional ag conservation acquisition projects. And so this, what has been shared in the last 15 minutes or so, is a status report of where we are on working on the SALT grant planning. And we would now like to take any questions the LAFCO board may have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Catherine. Do we have any questions from any of the commissioners? Comments? Direction? Nothing? Okay, well, I do have one question, and that is, are you spending time looking at the infrastructure required to enhance or expand agriculture?
We have not yet, but when we have the GIS mapping done, that will occur at that time.
What will GIS tell you about infrastructure?
Well, the GIS mappers can work with public work departments to get the infrastructure that is already developed integrated into our maps.
Okay.
And
All right. Yeah, but
from there, we would hope that the jurisdictions, the multiple jurisdictions, the county, etc., would want to evaluate those maps and in coordination with farmers, ranchers, etc., determine what additional infrastructure needs may exist.
well, you saw that evident in South Livermore with the need to expand, or that the city of Livermore is going to put a ballot initiative to expand to its sewer into outside the urban growth area to put a sewer line in, because the folks out there can't put in any more septic tanks.
Right.
So those.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a
All
good
right.
point.
All right. Commissioner Warner.
Yeah, given our earlier conversation about, the analysis on measure D and developing recommendations, I would just ask, is there anything out of what you're doing that you would suggest we include in our recommendation? So, half a dozen bullets could be, would entertain that if you had them.
We can send those.
Yeah, I think we can already draw some conclusions and send them over to Rachel, and you can evaluate whether you wish to include them in the Measure D report.
Well, yeah, not the report, but the recommendations we're going to be doing based on the report. So I was just suggesting, if you had some that you would want to for us to consider, please send them to Rachel. So thank you.
Be happy to.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
Sure. Would your report include any analysis of how viable it would be to get water to the agricultural communities, specifically maybe using recycled water? And then on top of that, you might be looking at reusing of biosolids for application to the soils to improve their fertilization.
That is not in the scope of our work, but there is actually a report that was done about 20 years ago, I think, by Innovate Tri-Valley, that did explore that possibility, and I'd be happy to share that with you.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work. Yeah, but good point. Thank you.
So I doubt that was done by Innovation Tri-Valley, because it didn't exist 20 years ago. However, there was a previous organization called, John, help me.
It's Tri-Valley Business Council. Sorry.
Yes, Tri-Valley Business
Sorry,
Council.
Tri-Valley Business
You're right.
Council.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the predecessor. So yeah, now I think that believe was called the Golden Valley Study or something like that.
That's
Right,
it.
John? Yeah,
I've
something like
got
that.
a copy of it, actually. Yeah, the Golden Valley 2020.
So you may want to use that as a cited material you may want to cite from if you do incorporate it into your study. So if you don't have a copy of it, Obviously, Commissioner Marchand does.
I do have
Joy
one.
of never throwing anything away.
Yes, we could tell from your background.
I've actually got it in electronic format, so if you want, I can email it to you.
Also, I'd like to mention that I think that this work under the Sustainable Agriculture Land Conservation Project does reflect LAFCO's active interest and furtherance of ag preservation and policies for conservation in Alameda County.
I think you've heard that many times over in the last hour or so. It's a good catch. Okay. This is just an informational item, right, Rachel? There's no action required of this on this at this point?
Correct. Yes. This is just a status update, and any feedback, we'll take that too.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hopefully we've given you some constructive feedback, and I appreciate all your effort and your presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
And excuse me, Chair, sorry, we do have one comment from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Kelly Abro, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, on the idea of that recycled water going towards agriculture, the Bay Area Council did a webinar series about 3 weeks ago, and that's a very blue chip, high level corporate sort of an organization. And they brought in one of the Israeli ministers of water, and they brought in some people from California that are experts on water here. And they talked about how they did precisely that. They are taking the recycled water, and in a matter of a few weeks or days or hours or something, they're getting that water into hothouse tomatoes for export to the markets. And also on this topic of land use for the land use study, I would urge you to, when you go back and look at land use, don't just look at the zoning and don't just look at the policies, but also look at those satellite images that are going to show you what kind of land use changes have been in the last 10, 20, 30 years, and then go back and say, okay, we see a huge subdivision being built here or whatever. What were the policies that led to that? Or whatever, the highways, whatever whatever's been happening out there. Start from the facts on the ground, and then try to build the policy stories and explanations and framework around that. Of course, going forward, it's a lot harder because no one can really predict what's going to happen in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment from Commissioner Von Heater-Leopold.
I'd just like to remind everybody, or let everybody know that doesn't know, DSRSD is actually currently buying wastewater from Central Sand just to meet our current obligations. So we don't have any recycled water available. I don't know about Livermore, but we're virtually out of the game.
Thank you very much, Georgine. I don't think Livermore is in that far off either. There isn't any water. We're not generating enough. No. Or we did, and it's being utilized. I know in new projects, whether it's housing or commercial product, you are being asked to dual pipe for irrigation with recycled water and potable water, because they cannot guarantee that the recycled water will be available for landscaping purposes.
That is correct. I mean, it's wonderful to be this successful 25% of the water that is used in Dublin is recycled water. So it's great that we sidestepped potable, but we are at the point of having to do that. We're going to have to add potable to the people we can't service.
Well, actually, Livermore's already selling recycled water to Pleasanton. And by the way, here's a copy of the Golden Valley 2010 vision. I can actually find it.
It was at the tip of his fingers. All right, well, thank you very much. Are there no further comments? We'll move on to agenda item number 11, executive officer. I'm sorry, number 10, matters initiated by members of the commission. Are there any? Nate, Commissioner Miley.
Yeah, this might fall under this category. Executive Officer Rachel came to the unincorporated services meeting for the Board of Supervisors and presented on the upcoming scope and potential feasibility of incorporation for Castro Valley, Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, and we had probably close to 100 people in attendance for that virtual meeting. A lot of feedback, comments, etc. And so Rachel will actually be talking this evening at a joint meeting of all of our municipal advisory councils, the Fairview MAC, Castro Valley MAC, and the Eden Area MAC to present on this. I requested that Rachel do this because I wanted to make sure it didn't have us, you know how things happen. Folks don't have clarity on what's going on. They think that there's some conspiracy or a mist around this. And I tried to assuage any of those concerns to let folks know that provide a sense of transparency in the unincorporated community about this preliminary feasibility study that'll be undertaken by LAFCo. So I just wanted to report on that and mention that to the commissioners, as well as thank Rachel for the presentation, fielding the questions to the Corporate Services Committee, and presentation that's going to occur tonight.
All right, thank you very much. So is this like a comment that returns every 25, 30 years, incorporation of Castro Valley? Is that sort of where this goes, where this fits?
Well, it's looking at, actually, this is the first time this has ever been done, this type of study that gets us not just looking at Castro Valley. My understanding, our consultant ultimately will look at Castro Valley, we'll look at Castro Valley and the other unincorporated areas of San Lorenzo, Ashland, Cherryland being incorporated as one. We'll look at just the Eden area and as we're describing it, we're talking about San Lorenzo, Ashland, and Cherryland. So the consultant's going to be looking at the feasibility of possible incorporation scenario. Fairview was left out, and there's some people who feel Fairview should be included, and others who feel Fairview shouldn't be included. And once again, it's a preliminary study. It doesn't even get into a lot of the more detailed study, but it's kind of an overarching type of a review. And so something of this nature that includes all of the unincorporated urban community has, as far as I know, is in terms of this caliber. But I do think, as I'm trying to mention to folks, I think the preliminary study is well worth the effort to try to assure people that LAFCO's paying for this, that it's not coming out of anyone else's pockets, although we're all taxpayers, and taxpayers ultimately are paying for it. But that's kind of what we're looking at, Splint. So it's just not focused on Castro Valley. Castro Valley is a component, and it's one of the scenarios that will be looked at, but there's others as well.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Miley. Rachel, sounds to me like Commissioner Miley pretty much took your time on your report. Because I see that on the agenda. That was one of the things you want to talk about.
Yes, a little bit, but I'll fill in some gaps, just to let the commission know kind of what staff is considering. I don't want to scare any of the commissioners that, no study has been conducted or given the green light yet. Staff took it upon itself to reach out to a consultant to get an estimate on kind of a preliminary comprehensive fiscal analysis of Castro Valley as one model of looking at incorporation. Another model would be looking at Castro Valley plus the surrounding areas of Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, and perhaps Fairview. And the last model would be looking at just those standalone communities of Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, and possibly Fairview. Overall, staff is going around, like Commissioner Miley said, meeting with the unincorporated services committee, as well as speaking at the joint MAC committee tonight, just to get feedback on what should be the model, what kind of areas we should include before we go to the commission at our July meeting to outline the exact scope of work that we're going to include and have the commission take action on whether we should move forward with this preliminary comprehensive fiscal analysis. The analysis will include kind of what revenue generators will be required for incorporation. Is incorporation feasible? It'll kind of give a healthy report of how these areas are faring and kind of what are their infrastructure needs if they were to incorporate. And I believe, excuse me, and the last thing is this preliminary comprehensive fiscal analysis is, again, preliminary. If the community wish to submit a proposal to LAFCO, they would also have to conduct their own comprehensive fiscal analysis. And LAFCO would not be paying for that or funding that. But this preliminary one would help overall if a proposal was submitted to LAFCO for the comprehensive one and reduce costs.
Okay. Anything else on that? No questions, comments? Okay. Next item would be the informational items. I think we all read those. We don't need any further report unless someone has some questions or comments. And so our next meeting will be the Policy and Budget Committee meeting on June the 2nd at 2 p.m. And then the next regular meeting is Thursday, July 14th. And maybe I should just ask Rachel, we're continuing on with Zoom. Is there any desire to start in-person meetings or hybrid, even if we could do those, which might be a challenge, but I figure we can let Rachel and figure that out on if there's a strong section that wants to have in-person meetings, please speak your piece. Okay.
Splendoria.
Yes, sure. Commissioner Miley.
I would like to say if we can go hybrid, that would be my preference. I would be very concerned if we went to in person and we weren't a hybrid option.
Okay.
Both the commissioners as well as the public during this state of emergency. Once the state of emergency ends, that could be, depending on if the legislation changes with the Brown Act and things of that nature, then we'll see what we can do. But at this point, I wouldn't feel comfortable just going to in person without a hybrid option during the state of emergency.
Okay. All right. All right, but Rachel, there's some direction. If we want to go in that direction, we want hybrid. Okay. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for all your input and thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Street Fest in Livermore.